Hi.
Hi.
How
Look
are
at
you?
us in our different 50 shades of blue.
Yeah, I know. It's chilly though up here.
Is it?
Yes. It's just
Oh my God.
temperatures just dropped all of a sudden.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry to hear that, considering how much I know you love the warm weather.
I do.
You really love like she really loves the warm weather, everybody. Rachel just would love to not burn in hell, but if it was as hot as hell, I'm sure that she would just be so happy because of how hot it is.
I know I should not be shocked at anything you say anymore. Why am I that way?
Why
Because
the hell are you shocked?
because I like my facial expressions. I'm just a very expressive person. Um,
As am I. Oh, do we have to do this already?
uh-oh.
If you would like to vote for Rachel Rosen, please vote for 1-866-3557 Rachel.
Okay, this is getting off to a very strange beginning, a very strange start. I also
American Idol.
we are so is it just a very Vancouver or Canadian thing? The first thing we tend to talk about is the weather. Almost every episode now.
Yeah, that or the amount of COVID cases. It's really an even toss up.
Right? Jesus. Let's not get Oh, well, I mean, I want to know how are you? Because I know for those that are listening, watching, what do we say? March the 30th, 2021, the province of British Columbia has just once again shut down like I guess you would say fitness location,
Any
any
yeah,
indoor.
any indoor group fitness or movement based classes, essentially. Any type of group gatherings indoors,
Right,
basically.
right. And
Yeah.
then with restaurants as well. So
Restaurants too. Yep.
there's somebody I know in particular who's just like, he's like, yeah, I'm out of a job again. Like, what am I, you know?
It's
So
horrible. It's horrible.
I know. Well, it's just because it's so, I mean, as this whole year has been so unexpected, but it's just been yo-yo back and forth, especially with
Yeah.
the openings and closings and openings and closings. But so what are you going to do? Or what's happened with your yoga classes or what's,
Well, I only teach 2 yoga classes a week in a studio format.
oh,
So for me, uh, it's like, okay, well, what else is new? Okay, great. So I don't teach these 2 classes a week for another 2 weeks, or maybe it might get extended to 2 months. How am I supposed to predict what the idiots of our country are going to be doing? Not the health officials, but sorry, the idiots that are living in these different in health regions of populations that are so fed up and tired about whatever. And I'm not talking about the people that are forced to work and they have to kind of figure it out and be in the public. I'm talking about the idiots that don't need to be doing that and they choose to because they're selfish and they want to live a normal life for a short time that's going to actually become a lot longer without them realizing it.
yeah,
So no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade, as I think it was Jasmine Masters, RuPaul's Drag Race likes to say. But it's just
yeah.
seriously, get your shit together. And even if our case counts are like 900 a day right now, and in India there's 60,000 a day, like I don't care what the ratio is. It's not okay regardless what the number is. Just get your act together. And I see people getting tired, and I'm just like,
Me too.
come
Yeah.
on, right? So anyway, I mean, for me, I'm just honestly, I've had a really, really stressful few weeks, and it's nice for me, even if I'm out of a little bit of income, I have a little less responsibility, and I get to focus on the things that I need to focus on. So when I do have the permission to come back to do what I want to do, then I'm going to be ready for it when that happens. So that's how I'm taking it, because what else am I going to do, right? I mean, I don't have any other choice.
So well said. So well said. And yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we cannot be selfish right now. We just
Mm-mm,
can't.
mm-mm.
And it is, I mean, believe me, I'm fucking fed up too. And I'm tired and we're all tired.
I know.
It's,
I
you know,
know.
stay the course. It's just unfortunate that Canada seems to be so, unless correct me if I'm wrong, but so behind the ball when it comes to
Yeah.
vaccinations.
I
So
know what it's like 1.76% or something of Canada's been vaccinated. Something
something
ridiculous.
like that. So I mean, I think that's where that's also been something that's yeah. Anyway, Anyway, yeah, sorry folks for that.
But you know what though, because our guests I know will be quite prompt in tuning in for our chat today.
Absolutely.
It's actually unintentionally a great timing in terms of them, her Nyk Danu from Victoria is a yoga therapist and also a yoga teacher specializing in slow, gentle yoga, specifically in yin yoga, yin restorative, which is my field. So having the ability, she does teach some stuff in studio in Victoria and then does online classes. And I met Nyk through Asana at Home, which I was teaching for until recently, as it just wasn't working out for me in terms of building a community. But she is someone that does have a community and has an online presence and has been able to build. And it's really interesting when we talk about, this is not a yoga podcast, we'll know. However, yoga is just a way of living, a way of being. And so if you think yoga is just physically oriented, then let us give you all the other elements of it, because there's so much more than just that, right? Yeah, exactly. So Nyk, I don't know, I haven't met in person, but when I did meet her through Zoom meetings and stuff and seeing how she presented herself, I just knew this is someone that is real, raw, authentic. And here she comes.
Perfect transition.
Hi, beauty.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. You can hear me okay?
Can hear you completely fine. The question is,
awesome.
Can you hear us?
I am going to close the window though, because inner city living and all.
Love it.
We hear, it's all good. We hear fire trucks around, Hero's apartment all the time.
I know, and unfortunately, they're not coming into my apartment.
Oh goodness. Well, it's so nice to meet you, Nyk. And
you too.
And so we just did a little light, airy introduction to yourself just before you popped on, and we are recording right away. So we always like to let people know, and just so that they're comfortable and okay with that. So tell us, we kind of, like I said, Hero kind of did a little bit of an intro to you, but we always kind of like to have our guests also introduce themselves in case there's something we've missed. I know you didn't get to hear how we introduced you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know.
Exactly.
You in Victoria right now?
Yeah.
And how's it going in Victoria?
Well, I mean, considering it's not such a loaded question nowadays. It's like, well,
I know.
Considering that just yesterday we got an announcement that yoga is shut down once again, just like you did, I'm sure. Yeah. So, trying to keep my eye on the bigger picture of things and not get too I'm at the point where the patience is just not there anymore. It's just enough already.
Yeah.
Actually, interestingly enough, we just spoke about that just before you popped on. So it was a good kind of segue to, what you've been doing. And we weren't sure how many group classes or how many indoor classes you've been teaching. But I know I was just asking Hero how he's doing, but he was only teaching a couple of weeks. So it's not a huge transition for him again. But for those of us, or not myself, but for those that have been teaching group classes, once again, those being shut down and just not knowing what the hell's going to happen in the next few weeks. So how are you doing in that respect? I think you've got a pretty good online following, though, or things going on with your virtual classes.
Well, I have some. So in-person classes, I had 3.
Okay.
And it's interesting because all of the places that I was teaching at, like before this happened, I'm not teaching at all, except for one. I have one class, which is such a blessing that there's a church that does this as part of their outreach, and they have like a 12-step meeting, and they wanted to have some trauma-informed yoga afterwards. So because of that, I don't have to rent the space. And so it's just basically, as long as I keep it trauma-informed and donation-based. They say donation-based. I call it sliding scale because I don't really like the word donation. So I'm not a charity. So that one is the only one that was the same. The other ones, one of the studios has closed. One of the other ones also had acupuncture. So they're just using the big yoga room for community acupuncture. So there's no yoga happening. And I do have some Zoom classes online. Thank goodness, because if I was not through this whole time, if I hadn't been teaching at all, I think I might have lost my noodle. Yeah.
No kidding. And so as I was saying to Rachel as well, you me initially met through Austin at Home, which is by a really, really good friend and colleague and fellow alum of the same trainer that educated me back in 2012, 13. And he's amazing. And so I kind of transitioned out of it about a month ago. And so how has it been going in the last month or so in developing your community in terms of your classes, in terms of your reach? How has that been?
Well, so I have my own Zoom classes that I run as well. And I'm actually finding it's the dreaded ring light shining right in my eyeball. Never a good idea with glasses. Okay, so my own Zoom classes that I've been running with my community have been going fairly well, although there's been some weird surprises. And the ones with Austin at Home are slowly building. They're still pretty quiet, but they're slow. But the difference being that the ones that I run on my own are not available to drop in. They're like a 12-week registered semester, which is by far my preference, because you get the same people for the whole time and you can really kind of bond as a community and you get to kind of go on a journey together. And it's kind of how I taught for many years in Calgary before I moved here. And then when I moved here, I started teaching drop-in classes and I was like, whoa, this is just a whole other thing. Like it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Right.
What I love is because he was telling me the style, I mean, you teach predominantly, a bit slower, softer yin, I believe, and, just more coming to yoga from a place of, more, body awareness and slowing things down and not as much the physical, acrobatic kind of craziness that a lot of people tend to come to yoga for.
Modern yoga.
More modern yoga. How did you, because I feel like a lot of people, not myself, but a lot of people have found yoga because of the physical asana part of it. So I feel, maybe mistake me if I'm wrong, but how did you find yoga? Was it more for the meditative part of it, or No, it just evolved to that. I actually had no desire to do yoga at all. So how I first came to yoga was I got dragged kicking and screaming. With my friend, because I'm a pretty edgy girl. And so I was a hairstylist at the time. I was still smoking. I was still drinking. I was still, doing the lifestyle. And then a couple of my hairstylist friends said, oh, we should go do this Monday morning beginner yoga class. It's a 6-week series. It'd be fun. And I was like, did you just say morning on my day off? Why would I want to do that? And this was 98 that I took my first class. And also I had this vision of the silhouette, and some people are going to be too young, so you can just Google it. I can't remember her name, but the silhouette of the woman with the long braid and the unitard on the PBS special this was yoga in my mind, right? Something that my mom's older friends did, certainly had zero cool factor.
Rachel will get that one.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, come on.
No, she probably won't without Googling it, because I think it might have even been in reruns back then. But that was the only picture I had in my mind of yoga, was this sort of Birkenstock hippie older female thing. And definitely not my speed. So finally, after much coercion and promise of lattes and door-to-door service, I said, okay, fine, I'll go to your stupid beginner yoga class. And I fell in love immediately.
Wow.
I left that class and was like, I'm doing yoga forever. This is it. Mad love affair. Yeah. And I was the only one who kind of stuck with it. They did their 6 weeks and we're like, that was fun. Let's take a cooking class. And I was like, no, but this, it was very different back then though. It was a registered series. It was taught by this lovely older woman, Anna, who talked about this little house in our heart in Shavasana. And it was just such a beautiful experience. And as someone who I now know, I didn't know that at the time, but I now know who's had anxiety for her whole life, this was the first time that I felt, I don't even know what the word was for it. It was floaty and grounded and calm all at the same time. And I was just whatever that is, I want more of that. And so that's what hooked me. It wasn't the physical. At the time, I had been a competitive bodybuilder in the past. and I was running when I wasn't busy smoking and drinking martinis. Yeah, I was doing it all at the same time.
I love it. Okay. Yeah.
So the yoga never really it never to me, because keep in mind, this is pre, crow pose on every advertisement. It didn't look like a physical challenge to me, because I had this idea of like this gentle sun salute in the unitard in my head. And I was like, well, I used to competitively bodybuild. Like, I'm pretty sure I can deal with yoga, as far as the physical part goes. So that wasn't the attraction at all for me. It was just literally pure pressure. And then it was the way that it helped my anxiety.
Yes.
Now, I would say when I first started teaching, it was still pretty physical, but I was still a very physical minded person. I mean, it hadn't been that long since I was bodybuilding. And so it was very easy for me to just be like, oh, here's now the goal. I'll put this goal pose on my vision board, and, but it changed.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to put that out there at all. I just sometimes I'm curious as to know as to why somebody chooses, one path, the softer kind of path, or why it's more of like a, I don't know, hot yoga, vinyasa, crazy rocket yoga, whatever it may be. Right. It's fascinating to me, because I feel like, and usually anxiety or those kinds of, depression, those kinds of things those topics do come up as to why people choose more of the softer kind of meditative, getting in your body, feeling those kinds of things. That's how I found it as well. So
yeah, even when I did more active, doing air quotes, active yoga, for those of you listening who can't see me, it was Iyengar. So it was standing poses and stuff, but it still wasn't really flowy and like, it was sweaty in a different way. Like, hold your warrior one for 5 minutes while I talk about the skin on your pinky toenail, that kind of like detailed holding. So, but it's a very different kind of challenge, and one that was more suited for me. I had tried some like Ashtanga classes, and I just felt more anxious after it did. Yeah. The movement was way too quick for me. And I was just like, whoa, I just got here. And also, because I used to sing, well, I still sing, it's just mostly chanting and in my house now. But as a kid, I developed like a pretty big lung capacity because of my vocal training. So I always found in a flow class, they'd be telling me to inhale and then exhale and do something else. And I was like, I'm halfway through my inhale. Am I like not finishing this breath, or like moving to my own drum, or like, how is this working? So I always just found it dysregulating. So I only went to a couple classes. I was like, no, this is too fast for me. I need something where I can like arrive and settle and be there for a while and check things out before I move into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that completely. Mm-hmm.
So how did you move from finding yoga to teaching yoga? So what made you want to
So when I was doing hair, I was also a teacher. So I was a platform artist. And for those of you who don't know what the heck that is, that's like if you imagine a rock concert. And so there's still the models and the music and the mics and all the things. Or it's like if a rock concert and a fashion show had a baby, except instead of clothes, it's hair. So I was an advanced educator that traveled across the country and was on stage a lot teaching. I know, right? It was so fun. Totally.
You're like, I sang and then I did the hair, and then I was like,
I was a weightlifter and I could kick people's asses with the dumbbell.
Yes, not anymore. No ass kicking now. And so I had discovered through hair that I had this love of teaching even prior to teaching yoga. I loved nothing more. So I taught on stage, but I also taught more kind of in classroom, conference style, like basic color theory and that kind of stuff. And then how to and then moved up from there. So I taught right from like, I've just got out of hair school. I don't understand the color wheel, all the way up to quite advanced stuff.
Wow.
And I loved nothing more than seeing that light go on in someone's eyes when they go from, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, to like, oh, I totally get it. And so I had really developed that love for teaching. And I did hair right from high school. Like I actually took in Alberta, where I'm from, you can take beauty culture, or at least you used to be able to. I don't know if you still can, in high school. Oh. And then when you finish, you have to apprentice for 1,400 hours. It's different than BC. In BC, you can just start doing hair. You don't even have to do anything really. You could,
Right. Awesome.
you know, I mean, I'm sure salon owners won't hire you, but like technically speaking, you can just roll out. And in Alberta, it's like very structured. So it was like 1,400 classroom hours, 1,400 apprenticeship hours, board exams, a written and a hands-on. So like it's, you know, it's an actual trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked that up, not initially planning to do hair. I actually just started that because Auto Body was full. So I was like, well, okay, let's try this hair thing.
Oh, wow.
And when I got out of school and got into a salon, the rebel in me and the freedom lover in me just loved the fact that I could make my own hours. I could listen to what music I wanted. I could dress the way I wanted. I got to like, it just, the lifestyle of being like my own, you know, sailing my own ship was awesome. So that's how I got into hair. But then over the years, it started wearing on my body.
Yeah.
They're really good now in hair school about teaching you like how to stand properly and where to bend from, but not when I did it. It was like you were in all funky positions and like, I mean, this shoulder still sits higher than this one, and I haven't been doing hair for like 16 years.
Wow.
So just all kinds of issues showing up with my body. So that was part of it. The other part was that I had been bitten by the yoga bug.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, had started going to more and more classes. And then I, you know, I think I was probably always a closet Buddhist. But I never said it out loud because I'm hesitant to commit to things, because when I commit to things, I tend to like go all in. Mm-hmm. So I tend to kind of wait for quite a while. And I always joke that I'm like the lone wolf that circles around something for a while and kind of smells it and pokes it with my paw before I finally am like, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been going to some meditation classes and, you know, things like that. And, you know, here I was on the road, still smoking and drinking martinis and doing the whole, excuse me, lifestyle with that. But, you know, always had like a yoga philosophy book or a meditation book in my bag and was reading that on the plane. So for a while there was this weird kind of what could seem like a dichotomy happening.
Yeah.
So I would say that there was two things that were happening at the same time. I was getting more and more injured. And at the same time, I loved being on the road. That was very creatively fulfilling, because essentially you only choose the models that say, you can do whatever you want. Yay. And so, you know, I was really creatively fulfilled, and I loved the traveling, even though it was very hard work and very exhausting. I loved all of that. But then I would get back to the salon, and this is, you know, the early 2000s in Calgary. So, you know, lots of blonde highlights, lots of Jennifer Aniston haircuts. And so it's like, I went from doing this like sculpture with color on hair to like, oh, right, okay, the highlights I can do in my sleep again. So when I was home and not traveling, my salon work wasn't fulfilling me anymore, and I was in pain, and I was spending more and more money on like chiropractic and massage and all the things. And then I had a friend who was a master hair colorist like me, and developed a hair color allergy, what seemed to be overnight, and had to quit doing hair and had no plan B. And that scared the crap out of me. I was like, oh, I have injuries. Like, what if it does get to the point where the chiropractor's like, yeah, you know what? And so I thought, well, it's probably better to come up with plan B now while I still have a plan A. And so I literally was so silly sitting there with a piece of paper, because I had been doing hair since I was 18.
Yeah.
And I had long given up my thoughts. Like when I was, you know, a teenager, I thought I was going to go to university and take, I was going to be a criminal rights attorney, or, you know, save the dolphins by being a marine biologist or something, you know, like those had long since been pushed away. So it was like, well, what do I love? I had been doing what I loved, and I just did not want to get like a job that I wouldn't love. So I literally sat down with a piece of paper and was like, what do I love to do? I was like, well, no one's going to pay me to drink coffee and read books, so that's out. You know, I had serving skills, because as I was building my career as a hairstylist, when I started out, you always need a side hustle. So I'd waitressed and bartended and barista and all the things. But that certainly wasn't looking good as like a long-term future thing.
Right.
You know, it's like you can only do that so long. And so I just really started thinking about it. And yoga ended up coming onto the list. And I was like, well, I love yoga. And I already know I love teaching. These things could go together. And so I researched a teacher training program, and that's how it started.
And can it make one it was? If you don't mind.
Sorry, I didn't catch it.
May I ask which training it was, if you don't mind?
Oh, yeah, it's no longer around. They were called originally the Yoga Studio in Calgary. Then right as I was graduating, they changed it to the Yoga College. Okay. And then they disbanded. And now the director from that has another teacher training program, which I honestly don't even know what umbrella he's got it under now. Yeah. But it was Iyengar based. I mean, it wasn't an Iyengar certification program because we all know that takes like half a century. Yeah. But all of the teachers that taught us, except for one, were senior Iyengar teachers. So really, it was like there was no pretending it wasn't really an Iyengar program. Yeah. So that was my first, and it was 300 hours because they did 200 plus apprenticeship for 100 hours.
Nice.
So like 25 assisting and observing, and then 75 apprenticeship, which is so brilliant. And if you run a teacher training program and you're listening to this, please add some damn mentorship in there. I cannot imagine having graduated without that and just been thrown into a classroom. And I had teaching experience, let alone the people who are like, they're still afraid to get up in front of the room. And like, it would be terrible to not have had that. So that was training number one. Oh. And that I finished that in 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but like here, when I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, but not just mentorship component, but more business side of yoga.
Business of yoga, marketing, branding.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because we live in the Western world. This is monetarily, that's our exchange is monetary for what we're doing.
Yeah.
My question for you, just going from, I'm having trouble with the word stability, but going from what is air quotes stable from, hairdressing or having, to yoga. Did you find,
stability might not be the word, but it was sure as hell abundant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you started teaching in Calgary, right?
Yeah. So my income from being a hairstylist to like a fledgling yoga teacher. So my thought was I would finish my teacher training and I would keep doing hair, and then I would just kind of teach a couple classes on the side, and then I would get more classes and I would do less hair. Like this is this beautiful little arc that I had in my mind that was going to happen. It didn't happen. All the classes I got offered were on days I had to be at the salon, and it was maddening. And I remember going home and just complaining to my partner about it. And he said to me, well, why don't you just quit doing hair? Right. And I'm like an overly responsible, like I was raised by a mom who was not present, and I took care of my sister. And so like, I was like, what do you mean like not work? Like, did you mean just like quit a job that's paying me? Like, what? I don't understand this,
Right.
And there's never a time for you to just do it. Now's the time. And so he probably had to have that conversation at least 3 more times with me before I finally started kind of thinking about it. And then, so I did. I just outright retired. And then of course I went and got a barista job because I just couldn't like not work at all. It was like, well, I at least have to pay for groceries or something. It was just like, I can't just sit here and it was brutal as far as the income. Like I actually ended up having to declare bankruptcy. Which was a decision that ate at my heart until I made it. And then I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted. Because I had so much debt from paying for my own medical expenses. Because of course, yes, I mean, for those who are not listening and aren't, yes, we can go to the doctor, but like that doesn't cover chiropractic, doesn't cover massage, doesn't cover acupuncture, doesn't cover like all extra things. That was basically, I felt often like one of those athletes who was kind of being put back together to get back out on the field, And so I was spending an enormous amount of money a month on just like trying to stay pain-free. And so I had accrued a fair bit of debt from that, and was just looking at like working at a coffee shop for minimum wage. And I was like, how does this, so I went from this really lucrative career with really amazing tips to like working as a barista and getting a little bag of change, at the end of the day. And it was a very, very big adjustment for sure. And very challenging to just switch. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, I think, the component that is not touched upon at all, I think, in training, or it's maybe people are aware of it, especially the teachers that are teaching the training. They're not naive to that fact. It's just, I don't know if they're scared to tell people, because then it's going to deter people from actually getting out there and teaching. But it's a very real fact. I mean, and so
I think there's two parts to that.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that part of it is what you were saying. Like if I run a teacher training program and I tell people right up front, by the way, it's going to be really hard to make a living as a yoga teacher. Well, how many people are going to sign up for my program? Right? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is most studio owners I know do not have a business bone in their body. And I think COVID is showing this. Like, look at how many studios are just like gone, because they had no nest egg. If your business model requires you to train other teachers to survive, that's not a business model.
No.
So it's, imagine if a martial arts studio only stayed open because it could train more teachers.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and same thing in a gym. Imagine if a gym only stayed, I'm not comparing yoga to fitness, but it's just an easy reference. But imagine if a gym only stayed in business because it had people training to be personal trainers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a model. I don't know where this idea came from that this was the way to be successful.
No, you need to have an omni-channel structure that doesn't rely specifically on the brick and mortar business. And that's where a lot of yoga studios do not have the infrastructure built into it, whether if they physically just can't from the inception or they don't realize that they have to, and Rachel has been a boutique studio owner on herself in her time that was very successful before any of these factors happened, though. These things that are happening now weren't even a thing when you even owned your studio, Rach.
Well, no, I mean, we won't make this about me, but I can.
No. Yeah. But it's relevant.
It is. I mean, it's the problem is that, especially with a city like Vancouver, any bigger cities, I mean, obviously the rent is astronomical. So your overhead's already like ridiculous. And it's just the model of what you can charge a student, what you have to pay your teachers, it doesn't, and what you have to pay with your overhead with the rent, it doesn't work out. It just doesn't.
I think that the model's broken too. When I first started taking yoga, you signed up for a registered series. Right? There was none of this drop in when I feel like it bullshit.
Yes.
And because I paid up front, I was committed. I was there.
You were locked
so not only could the studio count on, they had this amount of money for this class coming in. So it's really easy then to go, here, teacher, I will pay you well because you deserve it. And here is the money for the bills.
Yes.
But also it increased my commitment level.
Of course.
Because I paid for it.
Yep.
And it was the same group of people. And so I'm a big believer that the drop-in model is one of the things that killed yoga.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because the problem ended up being that I did end up trying more series, but people weren't grasping onto it because the drop-in model was so big and it was everywhere, and they could be lazy is not the right word. They could be kind of, wishing. Exactly. Yeah. Negative. Yeah.
It was a shock for me when I moved here because I'd mentioned in Calgary, all my classes were registered series, and those were self-run. So like I rent the church, I rent the hall, I register everybody, which is the way to go if you're a yoga teacher for sure.
Yeah.
And then I moved out here and like was trying to get used to this drop-in model, and the fact that like one class would be like super full, and then the next week at the exact same time it would be quiet, and it was like it was just too hard for me to understand like what, other than maybe there was a concert going, like why is this class so quiet when like last week it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I noticed it with a workshop. I had a workshop And the day before, I was, calling the studio, and I got my final number. So I went to go get the handouts photocopied, and I got an extra 3, just in case somebody signed up last minute. And it doubled from like Friday to Saturday. It doubled. I was like, well, I don't have, and it was literally, so I just thought, I'm just going to ask the people about this because I don't understand this behavior. So I just said, like, I'm just curious who signed up in the last 24 hours. And when they put their hands up, I was like, so I'm just curious, did you just find out about it? Like why was there and some of them had just found out. Some of them literally woke up that morning and thought, I think I feel like doing a yoga workshop today. And then just went on the website to see what was happening. Yeah. And some of them knew about it the whole time, but they were just waiting to see if like something else was going to come up.
Yeah.
And it's that mentality. But here's the thing. The reason that it keeps happening in yoga is because no studios, and I get how hard this would be to do, I do get it, are willing to be the one that says, we don't work that way. Yeah. If you want to be here, you either become a member, not this drop-in 10 punch class thing that never expires. Yeah. You either become a monthly member, and then here's the classes that are open to you, or you do registered series, and that's all we offer. And I realized that would be hard, but it wouldn't be any harder than what you've gone through with COVID.
No.
It's like, no. Wouldn't be harder than this,
No, it's so true though. And I mean, for me, I taught and I really loved so much of what I experienced of teaching for Y Yoga. Like there was a lot that I gained from it very much, but having classes that were drop-in facilitated and the points that you made, I sometimes had classes that I knew would always be busy, and it might have helped that the students resonated with me as a teacher. It might have also just been the time slot of the day, the style and the time, and you could put anyone in there, and regardless if those students were retained or not, they would still show up, and they might be different people, right? Yeah. So when you have a registered series, not only are people paying for the teacher and what they offer and the community in the building, which is what you've been touching on, which is so true, you also have people that are actually wanting to be invested in what they're receiving and when they return and sign up again, right? Yeah, it's a completely different setup. And
they're saying,
save that.
Yeah, they're saying, I value you as the teacher. I value this community. I value the things I'm about to learn.
Yeah.
So it really is very much a put your money where your mouth is situation. And I can say this because I've done both, right? Yeah. Like I've done exclusively registered, and people were always like, oh, what was it hard? And I was like, well, in the beginning when I was a new teacher, because no one knew me, I hung a lot of posters but then, she told a friend and she told a friend and she told a friend. And before you knew it, all my classes were full with a wait list. Like I gave the current students 2 weeks to register before I emailed the rest of my list. Smart. And they knew if they didn't get their spot, like it was gone. Smart. So when people say to me that this business model can't work, I'm like, just because you can't envision it doesn't mean it can't be real, because I lived it. Yeah.
No, it's true.
So how has it gone from, because I find that everyone's got a different experience, obviously, but going from, in-person classes due to COVID, doing more virtual classes, it's interesting because I went from teaching a lot a week to teaching only one. I've got a long story, but one class a week in person. And then as soon as I put that class online, it was like pulling teeth to get people to, like, I thought it would be easier because, you're at home, convenient. How have you found having to kind of pivot between those two?
I think I might have been one of the few teachers who was always planning to do Zoom classes. COVID just kind of lit a little fire under my ass. Because I had an audience in Calgary and I now live in Victoria, and every time I would go back to visit, I would run a special class and they would sell out immediately. And I would keep hearing them, they'd give me hugs and say, I still haven't found a teacher. And I'm, and this is like, now I'm almost 5 years, and it would be equally complimentary and heartbreaking to think that, like, you haven't been doing yoga this whole time because you haven't found a place that resonates with you or a teacher. And so it became really apparent to me that if I were to offer something online, they would take advantage of it. And the reason it took me so long is because I kept, this is why I want to encourage teachers, if they're listening, to think outside the box. Because I kept thinking I needed to create all this pre-recorded video content and then get a membership, right? Because that's what we do in the industry, right? We create all these pretty videos and then we charge people every month to access them. Not saying there's anything wrong with that model, but it wasn't filling my heart. Because what I wanted was to see their faces, and they wanted that connection. And so long before COVID, I had started trying to figure out how I could live stream, but in a way that I could see them, because I'd been on some live stream events, but they were one way. And I just was like, I don't want to teach a blank screen. I mean, I do that. I do do yoga with me. And so like I do that pre-recorded stuff, but it's a completely different experience than teaching actual faces, you can't tell if your jokes are landing, there's all these things that just don't work when it's just a camera. So I had been pondering for a while, and then I had been taking some Zoom classes. Excuse me, apparently I have a frog in my throat. I had been taking some Zoom workshops and things like marketing stuff.
Yeah.
And so being on the other end of it and just seeing like, this doesn't actually look that hard. Like you just click here and you put the camera in the right place. And so I'd kind of started thinking like, maybe this could happen. And I was planning to start them in June of last year. So not the past one, but the one before. Ugh. What month are we? Who am I? So that was my plan, because I had a retreat planned here for my Calgary people to come and experience Vancouver Island spring, because in Calgary there's no spring. So I was like, come here for the May long weekend, come see the flowers, come go to the ocean, And so I had planned that and had started registering it and rented the space, and then COVID hit. So I had to cancel it. And so rather than it being, okay, I'll do this in June, I was like, well, I'll just start now. So I started with just a meet and greet, like a tea and a chat. And I just kind of made a Zoom meeting and invited anyone who wanted to come and talk about this possibility and see what ideas they had to just come and hang out. And we did. And I tried one class, and I just did like a shorter session, like a 6-week session. And just told them like, I don't have a mic, I don't have lights, we're just figure this out, and I'll invest as I need to. And it filled immediately. And then it kept doing that until January. And I know a lot of people that said that January, normally in yoga, January is like, whoa, hold on to the gates, Not this time. I don't know if it's Zoom fatigue. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that people don't know what month it is. But it was much quieter. In fact, it was quieter than I'm just registering right now for my spring session. It starts after Easter. And that session is now busier than January was. So I'm still doing them. They're still doing well. And I'm building them. And I think it took some people quite a while. I think a lot of people didn't sign up at the very beginning because they thought, like we all did, this is just going to be a couple months. And so they were like, no, I'll just take a couple months off yoga. But then the thing is, the more time you take off yoga, now it's not a habit. And you forget how good it feels. And, so I have people now joining that, have just been like, I resisted, but I have to. And then I've had people say, I just couldn't see how yoga could work on Zoom. They just couldn't picture it. And so because I've offered a few workshops, so one of the things I started finally doing, I always knew I would do it. I just was, waiting for the right time, apparently, is I started offering, so I'm a yoga therapist now, many years later.
Yes.
And I started offering some classes that are specific to anxiety. Because, hello, dealt with that my whole life. So, got some experience there. And then, of course, the training. And I always knew I would do it, but I was kind of just waiting. And then when COVID hit, I was like, you can't wait anymore. Like, even people who aren't anxious normally are anxious right now. So, this is the time. And, so I started doing one of those classes, and that's been doing really well. And I think that maybe it's because my classes have therapeutic themes, except for my yin. My yin is just yin. It's just straight up yin. But, I do my niche previously was back care. And so I do like a class, for people's backs, and then I do one for anxiety, and then I have my yin. So I wonder if maybe that helps, the fact that I'm being really specific. It's not just kind of like a general drop-in hatha thing.
That makes sense. And you're speaking to exactly what people need right now. I mean, even back from people working at home all day long.
Mm-hmm.
These awful wooden chairs, whatever you've got, that maybe you didn't have this amazing ergonomic office chair. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've always taught back care, and then I had a student. And so I changed the name slightly because I used to just call it straight up back pain yoga. It just made sense. It's like, let's be clear. Let's be SEO friendly. Back pain yoga, you know? Right. Let's not be fancy with the title. But then I had a student who was attending a regular class saying, well, I was kind of thinking about the other class because that, you know, works better for my schedule, but I don't have back pain. I was like, every time you log on and we do our check-in and I ask if anyone has anything that needs to be addressed, you're going, my shoulder back here. So I was like, that's your back.
Yeah.
Like, you do have back pain. You're just not calling it that. So then I changed the name to yoga for your back. And then in brackets, I put neck, shoulders, and hips too, you know, so that, and now people are like, oh, you mean like there's more than just, it's like, yeah, so back care class isn't just about like this tiny region of your back body. It's you know, it's a lot of things. So I don't know. I wonder sometimes if being that specific helps. I wonder if it's the fact that I had people that were already going through withdrawal from yoga. But it was interesting because I thought all my Zoom classes would be filled with my Calgary folk. And it's pretty much 50-50, Calgary and BC. Even when classes opened back up here, a lot of my students have stayed on Zoom. So, yeah, I guess time will tell, of course. But it is something that I always plan to have as part of my business model.
Well, it's so smart. I mean, especially right now with, again, you know, we were just saying before you popped on, you know, now restaurants are, you know, indoor dining is closed for the time. Right. So, I mean, to have a sort of a backup plan, I guess, or, you know, we're living in times where we have to be comfortable doing these kinds of things, doing these technical types of things. And just, it really is teaching us to learn how to be adaptable. That's right.
And for me, it just came down to sovereignty, which has always been really important to me. Like, you know, at one point I remember I went and got my tarot cards read on my birthday, not last year, but the year before, because I only do that when I have a decision where my head and heart are battling and I just can't seem to, like, even, you know, I've written the lists and I've meditated and I just am like, I don't know which way to go. I'll usually go and say, okay, here is the question. And I was really torn between, and this is pre-COVID, trying to build my in-person classes here and spending so much attention trying to build community here and nurturing the community I already had. And I just felt like my energies were being pulled in two directions. And so I wasn't really effectively doing either. And I was like, all torn about it. And the answer very clearly became, do which one was easier, which was Calgary, because I mean, most of my email list was Calgary. And so that's why I was like, okay, let's make a retreat for my Calgary people and let's start the Zoom classes. And so I'd already shifted in that direction. Because of that. I do think, though, that if you're going to run Zoom classes as a teacher, not through a studio, and this goes back to what you were talking about with the marketing, which none of us were taught to do, you have to be willing to treat what you do like a business. Like, you can't just grab your smoothie and roll on in and teach your class and expect the room to be full for you. Like, this is your business. And maybe, you know, it's a little easier for me to say because even when I was a hairstylist, I was self-employed. Like, I had to get my own clients. I wouldn't just show up at the salon and all of a sudden my chair was full. Like, no, I had to, you know, word of mouth, and I had to find strategic people that would help me promote my business. And, you know, it was different then because the internet was not the beast that it is now. So it was in-person stuff, but I mean, the principles were similar, you know? And this is something that I think, like you were saying, they don't tell yoga teachers in training. I remember my business training. Oh my God, it was so pathetic in my 300. It was 2 hours. We had an hour with an accountant, talk to us about, you know, whether you want to incorporate or be a sole proprietor, which I already knew because I was already in, you know, business with my hair. And then we had another hour with somebody who talked about how if you're a yoga professional, if you're going on an interview, make sure you dress like a professional. So don't show up in leggings, wear your blazer, blah, blah. I was like, you would have to pay me to put on a blazer, first of all. And second of all, what if they ask you to do some kind of an audition or teach them 5 poses and now you're wearing it? Like, that was my business training. And I remember at the time just thinking like, they're all screwed. It's like, all the rest of y'all are screwed. Like, like, I got a few tricks up my sleeves, but you all are, you know.
I know. Well, and also in terms of business and yoga, right? I mean, I've seen so much, and I've written lots of articles on my website about business and what you do after. And I kind of joke around and call like after samadhi. Like, okay, great. Like, you've gotten enlightened. Congratulations, you've got your 200 hour.
Yeah.
Well, now you don't know what the hell to do, and it's not your fault. So here, let me educate you on whatever almost 10 years of knowledge I've gained, and I'm not going to ask you to pay for it. I want you to just have it because I want you to be successful, not struggle like so many teachers do.
That's what I started doing too. But for me, it hadn't occurred to me until people asked me for help.
Yeah.
It was when my yoga teacher friends started saying, so I noticed that you do like, can you explain? And it was like, oh, okay. So I was just kind of like helping yoga teacher friends and acquaintances with their business. Right. And it wasn't until a dear friend of mine pointed out though, because at the time when I moved here, I went back to school full time. Initially, when I moved here, I didn't jump right into yoga. So I did 3 years of full-time school and then another 6 months of like part-time school. Okay. And so I was in school full-time. So I wasn't running my own classes. There was no way I could do that with the course load that I had. It was just like, I need to be one of those teachers who just rolls up to the studio and hopes the class is full because I have no time.
Right.
And so that's what I was doing. And I was working part-time in retail, because that's what you do on the side. You get a little hustle. I was retailing, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine about how I was helping a yoga friend with her business. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, well, how much do you charge for that? And I said, well, I'm not charging her. And she said, Nyk, you're selling shoes and you're not charging for business consulting. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, what would I tell me? Right. So I started doing some more, I started charging, and I started doing some more, like I have a course that I've only done in person. I'm going to put it online coming up, which just kind of makes it more affordable, right? For people to like get their foundations in place without having to pay for like one-on-one time with a business consultant.
Yeah, that's great.
It's interesting. Like, and I found the same thing. Why is it so hard for yoga teachers, and I'll speak for myself, to value ourselves and to ask what we're worth? Because I found that was a very difficult thing for me to do. Not only that, but Hero, I was like, Hero, do you have something to say?
Go on.
Each other's minds, I think, too much. And the other thing is, what I was going to say, I lost my train of thought, was that we're selling something that it's hard to, you can't feel it. Like, I'm not selling a piece of clothing, I'm selling me. So that's a whole other type of product, right? Like, you are selling yourself, and that's very difficult to do. So not only are we not being taught how to do these things, but it's a psychological, emotional, it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm going to chime in here. So this is something that really heats me up, is that people don't realize is that the moment that you have a social media profile, you're a brand. And it doesn't mean that your brand means that you're selling a product that's tangible. You're selling yourself, and you are a brand. And people get kind of weirded out by that. But even my Instagram account, which is just me, I'm a brand. I'm marketing myself as me in my daily life, and people wonder what I'm selling. And I've said, I'm not selling anything. I'm being me. And if you want to be a part of it, then you can be a part of it. And I don't give two shits if that's 100 followers or if it's almost 1,600 followers. I really don't care. And you make that conscious decision when you start putting yourself in media. And then those people that you do. So when people say they want to be an ambassador, you need 10 to 20 to 30,000 followers to be this brand influencer or whatever. Great, if that's your thing. But when you talk about reach, you talk about the metrics, you talk about like what your engagements are, people are like, so I can now say, well, actually, I'm a community micro ambassador, and that's even more powerful than some dipshit that has that many thousands of followers that doesn't have any connection to people, and that might not even generate conversion and sell through of your brand. The other component to this, in terms of being a teacher, is that teachers will start looking at their profiles, and studios start looking at, oh, what's their social media presence like? And they'll start to factor it on your popularity, like you're in high school, that you're going to sell, which doesn't always equate to that whatsoever. It just means that there might be more noise in terms of what people are creating buzz about, but there's no actual substance or results from that. So how do we actually understand marketing and branding? Because when it comes to your studio, when it comes to your teacherhood,
yeah,
I mean, like, what are you doing? So when you want to be a yoga teacher,
even our podcast, I mean, yeah, right, yeah.
I will say I'm with you here on that, because I was resistant to this whole idea of me being a brand.
Yeah,
because I had this idea in my head that like that meant I was Coca-Cola. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like, and so what I finally realized though was, you know, because I always used to say, well, yeah, but I'm not a brand. I'm just me. Like I'm just being me. And then I finally realized, oh, just being me is my brand.
Exactly.
Like, you know, my brand colors were chosen because they're my favorite colors, not because I went and did market research. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, these are the things I like. Yeah. This is my point of view. Point of view is huge for a brand. And I find that so many teachers are like, so many yoga teachers will just not say shit, even if their mouth is like full of it.
Completely.
Like, don't be afraid to have a point of view. You know, so your point of view, who you are as a person is your brand. And I'm much more of the liking of Seth Godin, and where he talks about like having 1,000 true fans. That is far more valuable. I would rather have 1,000 people on my account who actually see what I put out, who post on it, who were kindred spirits, who are on my email list. That is far more useful. Like, what is the point of having 50,000 followers if they're not coming to your class?
No. I know.
It's pointless. It's vanity metrics is what it is.
Well, it also, but you know what though? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you and me looked at each other and didn't even know who we were, but we just saw like, oh, who is this? Me and you were like, okay, yeah, that's my thing. That's my peep. Like that's my thing, right? We just knew. And it was funny how you and me would look at each other and just be like, you know, you just have that kind of like, right? And so it's awesome. And it's awesome though, because it's like, I don't give two shits. I really don't. And it's not a way of being, and it's funny, I said this term before, but it's just like, you know what? If you're going to be putting all this out, and same for me, then be prepared for people to call you out on it and put you in your place, because if it's bullshit and you want real authenticity and being in the yoga industry, any industry, be prepared for people to mention it. Even if you have an authority to say, okay, get out, like, I don't want you here, you're ratting out my dirty laundry. Yeah, you're right, I am. But it's important to be able to be truthful and authentic if what you're trying to preach is yoga. If you're trying to preach asana, cool. But don't call yoga if you're not offering yoga, right? It's just like, come on, be real. So a lot of people will say, I'll tell teachers, are you wanting to go into being a yoga teacher, or do you want to sell yoga as a product? Because those are two different things. If you want to sell yoga as a product and you want to put a price tag attached to it, and you want to teach an asana class and weave in some thoughtful, you know, wisdom and some breath work, that's nothing wrong with that. But let's just call a spade a spade. Let's call a yoga mat a piece of rubber. Let's actually get real to it, you know?
There's such a vicious, mic drop. There's such a vicious cycle though, because yes. You just lit a fire under me to just call out the fact that these studios, though, some of them are to blame because...
Oh, they're totally to blame.
And I don't want to name names or anything, but like, it's hard because then a lot of these teachers are being told to conform because they will not be allowed to teach in a studio unless they do think a certain way or talk a certain way or don't say certain things or do say certain things. And so, and therefore that leads out into their social media or vice versa. And that's how they're able to make a living. So how are they, there's such a...
It happened to me.
Here's the thing. I'm the queen of unpopular opinions. I cannot, I am a Sagittarius through and through. I cannot help but just be blunt and honest. And I just like, I'm not going to hide my thoughts and my feelings and my opinions. No. And sometimes my opinions change when I get more information, and I'm totally allowed to do that because I am an ever evolving person.
Exactly.
However, my plea to yoga teachers would be, stop caring so much about the fucking studio.
Yes.
Go get yourself a little teeny room in a community center and do the hard work that it takes to build your own thing. And then it's yours. Now, not that you own the students. I don't mean like that, but I mean like create your own. When you see something in the yoga world that annoys you, fix it.
Yeah.
Or talk about it if you can't fix it alone because, you're just one person.
Right.
But like find kindred spirits. Start talking about it. Don't let your mouth be so full of green juice and oming that you can't say what you think. And if you...
Yes.
And $40 cash bags.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? I mean, it's never happened to me. Luckily, I've never walked into a studio and had them be like, yeah, you're a bit much, or you're not conformed enough or skinny enough or whatever, young enough. I'm at that age now where that could start coming up pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I think that's also because I've chosen my studios really, really, really strategically. Like when I moved here, I went to all the studios first. And, the question is, if I taught here, would I feel like I sold my soul? If that's the answer. If the answer is yes, I'm not applying here. And yes, I understand, dear 200-hour yoga teacher, if you're listening, I understand that means it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why we think as yoga teachers, like if you take a journalism degree and then you graduate, you're going to be interning at a newspaper. Like, you're going to be coffee and donut bitch for like a while. And that the only way you're going to get a chance to write an article is if like someone's sick or someone's out of town and suddenly there's a lead story and, we all see it on TV, right? Like you write it, you do well and you start to, but why is it that as yoga teachers, and I think it's partially the teacher training programs, that we think that we're going to just like step out the studio door from our 200-hour and suddenly we're going to be a flush with yoga classes and Instagram followers and endorsements. And we're going to be flying all over the world being a yoga celebrity. Like, without actually doing any work.
Yeah.
Now,
so
that's just the problem with, I would say, almost every industry, though. We come out of any schooling for anything, and I think that's the problem with social media, and that's the problem with flashing anyone for anything. So not to dumb down the yoga industry, but I think that's a really good point. So those of you that are listening that are not yoga teachers, because I get that this episode's quite specific. But
because we're all yoga teachers. Yeah.
There's a lot to be learned. You can really apply a lot of this, I think, to a lot of industries as well.
We're also all alternative yoga teachers that take our practice and take our lifestyle off the mat and really bring it into real conversation and just true facts of life. Really, it is. It's the one thing that I find that is the school of yourself. And it's what brings people coming back to it, is that they want to know why they can't always figure it out. Why is there no final answer? Well, that's because you're always changing and growing. And if you're not, you're going to keep repeating the same things, which means you're still going to be doing it. It's never going to go away.
Yeah. I remember really clearly the day that that it hit me that I couldn't keep teaching yoga the way I had. Because I did what everyone did. I got out of my 200-hour, I got my resume, I went to the places, I was eager, I did all the things, and I had slowly built up. And I was teaching, I think, between 15 and 20 classes a week, depending on the season, which for an introvert, way too much peopling. And so I was at the point where I was totally burnt out. I actually started thinking I was losing my mind because I'm also highly sensitive. So like, I would teach all these classes, then I would sit on a bus and I'd just be like, oh my God, headphones, like, too much, too many people.
I get that.
And I had Easter off, and I remember being so excited that I was going to have like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday with like no teaching until I added the math up and was like, oh, So I'm a fledgling teacher. I'm going to have 4 days off. That means groceries are going on Mr. MasterCard this month.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of that hit me, and I just sobbed
Mm-hmm.
for like 3 days. Sobbed. Was just like, I don't understand. I know I'm meant to do this, but I'm freaking broke. And like, I just keep adding another class, and like, I don't understand. Like, what am I not, like, what is going wrong? And, you know, and so I pouted for about 3 days and sobbed. And then by Monday, I was like, no, fuck that shit. I was like, you know, I see teachers doing this and paying their bills and going on vacation. There has to be a way to do this. I just am not seeing it. And I wasn't seeing it because I was so focused on the just get another class, just get another class, just get another class.
Yeah.
That was my tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't see past that, that actually there had been opportunities, and I don't do any of these things currently, but at the time, there had been opportunities right there for me the whole time. Like starting to run my own classes that doubled my income, and my students did not pay 1 penny more. Doubled my income.
Wow.
Yep.
So that was one. You know, things like students would come to me and go like, oh, where can I get a good yoga mat? And I would send them to a studio to go buy the yoga mat. And they would even look at me and say, can't I get it from you? Can't I get it from you? Oh my God, how many times did I hear that before? I was like, well, sure, I could order it wholesale and mark it up just as well as they can. You know, how many times did I hear them say, you should record that guided shavasana that you do. I would pay you for that. And I was like, oh, you're so sweet. I would pay you for that. Like, oh my God, you know, like, so there were things there. I just couldn't see them because I was so focused on this broken model of like, get another class, get another class, get another class. And once I was like, nah, fuck that shit. It seemed like my vision opened. So it's like, I could now see, oh, wait a minute. If I just went and rented that church basement, and yes, the first session was expensive because I had to buy the props. So the first session, I didn't make much, but after that, doubled my income, and my students weren't paying more, and I had control. So if they were like, you know, it would be nice is if this class was 15 minutes earlier, I could be like, well, let's make it so. Whereas before it was like, I'd have to go talk to a studio owner or a gym owner and try to convince them that like, this is what the people want. And it was just like so exhausting, but I never would have probably thought of any of that had I not hit that exhaustion and burnout. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of teachers hit that and then they just stop.
Yep. 4 times for me. 4 times.
Which you might have to. You might give yourself a freaking break if you need it.
Yep.
You know? But I do think that there's a difference from my experience between teachers that just know they were put on this earth to teach and teachers that like, oh my God, you know, it would be such a cool job. Right. And those teachers that are just became yoga teachers because they thought it would be cool and fun and they'd get great deals on leggings, they're not going to make it. They're just not. Because there's a tenacity required, you know, that I think in this industry. Well, and, you're right. And I also think, and I'm, again, another unpopular opinion about to drop here. I also think if that's the kind of teacher you are, where you got into this so you could wear cute leggings all day and become Insta famous, please find another career.
I seriously agree with that, though. It pisses me off, story. And you know what's even more frustrating is that if those people are truly authentic in what they're doing and that's how they're representing themselves, I can't ding them for that. I can't criticize them for that. That's genuinely who they are, right? So then you get into this weird kind of feedback loop of who's doing it and how is it translating and are they making a difference, as in like a wave symbol here if you're watching. Are they making waves and making a difference in their public voice? Or are they just adding to that whole tsunami of toxic media?
That's where it goes back to, again, the 1,000, you know, dedicated followers, the 50,000, 100,000 flash in the pan kind of yoga teacher. I mean, and again, with any industry, I mean, my God, Nyk, we could talk to you for hours and hours and, and bitch and no, just kidding, kvetch. Good old Jewish.
I prefer to think of it as point of view. Yes, we have some strong point of views on our industry. That's okay.
And they're relevant and they're fair and they're not exaggerated.
Yeah.
No, exactly. One thing, well, first and foremost, I really appreciate you reaching out and saying, hey, I would love to be on the podcast. And secondly, I was thinking of reaching out to you as well, since you and I connected, because I just wanted to know more about who you were. And, you know, it's nice to have a kindred spirit and someone that understands, especially from the lens of teaching from gentle and therapeutics and on all those things too. Because there's a very few small communities of that in our regions, at least in BC, you know?
Yeah.
And so one of the fun things we like to ask, since we are the Getting Juicy podcast, is if you were a kind of juice, what would you be and why?
Can I have two?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So like on a low rent day, I'm going to be a straight up V8.
Yes.
Because I love me a good V8, right? If you're ever in a truck stop, they got to have a V8 somewhere. Like I'll take a V8. Oh my God,
yeah.
Love it.
If I'm feeling fancy, then I'm going to be kale and celery and cucumber and ginger and lemon and green apple.
Oh my God, yes. And do you make it yourself?
I used to. I've stopped juicing currently, but yes, I used to. Yeah.
I
love it.
One of my
love it. Love it. And so where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? And is there anything else you want to promote or share before we sign off for today?
Well, I've learned that you never know when podcasts are going to go live, so I'm not going to give anything time specific. So nykdanu.com, that's where you can find me. And from there, you're going to find a teacher's portal and a student's portal. So if you're not a yoga teacher and you're interested, you click the students. If you're a yoga teacher, you can click the teachers. And the only social media, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but to be honest, I got a love-hate relationship with Facebook. So please don't follow me there. But I do much prefer Instagram, and I'm just Nyk Danu Yoga on Instagram.
Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have an awesome rest of your day. And
yeah, thank you too.
So much
I love how
for you.
Real and raw and personal your podcast is.
Thank you so much. And then one thing I just want to say is just because you brought up so many good juicy topics and whatnot, but there was one thing that I think really just yoga teachers need to maybe hear is please value yourself. Don't think that you're not worth it. You know, there's so many little things that you said that you could have done. It's like, well, I would have paid you for this. I would have paid you for that. You know, You're worth it. You have a value, and you know, and get that.
And your true students want you to thrive.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
They don't want you homeless.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you are worth more monetarily than what anyone most likely might provide you. So if you really want an opportunity, look at what the opportunity can provide you in addition to the monetization behind it, because business models, drop-in models, they don't work.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thanks, you too.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.